When you suddenly stop talking to a woman, something unexpected happens. Your silence begins to speak louder than anything you've ever said. In the noise of daily conversations, texts, calls, and routine check-ins, your voice becomes a background presence in her world. But when you pull away without explanation, it's as if you've pressed mute on a soundtrack she didn't know she was emotionally tuned into. At first, she might brush it off. Maybe you're busy. Maybe your phone died. Maybe it's just a moment, but as the hours turn to days and your absence stretches, that silence grows teeth. It starts to bite. You see, communication is not just about words, it's about presence. When a man stops talking to a woman, especially without warning, she doesn't just hear the silence. She feels it, she analyzes it. It enters her thoughts and sits in her chest. She replays the last conversation. She re-examines her last message. She wonders what shifted. Was it something she said? Something she didn't say? Did you get bored? Did something happen that she missed? The silence becomes a puzzle, and we, as women, are naturally wired to solve emotional puzzles, especially when they involve someone we care about. And here's the deeper truth. Your silence, though unspoken, communicates layers of meaning. It says you're pulling back. It says something changed. It says she no longer has the access to you that she once had. Whether or not you intended it, this distance challenges her ego, her heart, and sometimes even her identity in the context of your relationship. Because in the moments where she once had your attention, your words, your energy, there is now just nothing. That emptiness becomes a mirror. In it, she doesn't just see you. She sees herself reflected through how much she meant to you, or how little, and don't underestimate how impactful that silence can be, especially if you were someone she emotionally invested in. Because women remember the way you made them feel. If you made her feel seen, safe, understood, and then suddenly you're gone, your absence becomes a disruption in her emotional ecosystem. Even if she was strong, independent, busy, and distracted, your sudden silence presses pause on everything else and asks a question she wasn't prepared to answer. What happened? Silence demands attention. It creates a void, and in that void, assumptions, emotions, and vulnerabilities start to rise. She starts to fill in the blanks with her own stories. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you found someone else. Maybe you were never serious, or maybe, just maybe, she did something wrong. Whether or not these stories are true, they begin to shape how she sees the situation and how she sees you. And if there was love involved, or even potential love, that silence can be deeply unsettling. Not because she needs constant attention, but because human connection is built on consistency, and when you vanish, it breaks the rhythm she subconsciously relied on. Now, here's where it gets even more powerful. If you used to talk to her daily, if you used to be available, if your voice was part of her emotional routine, your silence will scream, not in volume, but in impact. It will remind her of everything she's now missing. And ironically, you won't have to do a thing. You won't have to send a message. You won't have to explain. Your silence will become the message, and it will be louder than any apology, any excuse, or any explanation you could have offered. But remember this, it's not just about going quiet to manipulate emotions. If you're pulling back because you need space, clarity, or peace, then your silence is authentic. It's a boundary, and yes, it will still speak. It will still say something. It will say, I am not available in the way I once was. And she will hear that too, loud and clear. In the end, when you suddenly stop talking to a woman, the silence doesn't mean you've disappeared. It means you've created an emotional echo chamber where your absence reverberates through every conversation you would have had, every good morning you didn't say, every reply you didn't send, and that silence. It lingers, it speaks, and most of all it's remembered. When you suddenly stop talking to a woman, something shifts deep within her emotional world. It's not just about the disappearance of texts, calls, or conversations. It's about how that silence triggers her internal alarm system. Whether she admits it or not, whether she reacts visibly or not, her emotions go on high alert. She begins to feel things she didn't expect to feel. A sense of unease creeps in, and questions begin to stir in her mind. This is not because she is weak or overly attached, but because human connection, especially romantic or emotional connection, creates a kind of emotional rhythm. When that rhythm is suddenly broken without warning, it causes emotional disorientation. This disorientation leads to insecurity, not necessarily in herself as a person, but in the dynamic she shared with you. She starts asking herself questions that she wouldn't normally consider. Did I do something wrong? Did he lose interest? Is he mad at me? Is he talking to someone else? These questions begin to spin in her mind, not because she is desperate for validation, but because uncertainty is emotionally painful. Uncertainty makes the heart restless, and that restlessness only grows when it's fueled by confusion and silence. Her emotional alarm system doesn't just signal fear or sadness. It also triggers a need for answers. Human beings, especially women who are emotionally invested, crave emotional clarity. That doesn't mean she wants control. It means she wants to understand, but when you go silent, you deny her that understanding. You close the emotional door without offering a key. That's when she becomes consumed by trying to decode the silence. What seemed simple before now feels complex. What was once easy now feels like a maze, and this sudden shift can turn even the most confident woman into someone second, guessing herself. This is also where past wounds often resurface. Maybe in a previous relationship, someone ghosted her, disappeared, or emotionally withdrew without explanation. When you suddenly stop talking, it can unconsciously remind her of those moments, and because the brain is wired to protect itself, it immediately goes into defense mode. Her emotional alarm system doesn't just warn her about you. It reminds her of every other time she felt abandoned, misunderstood, or emotionally dismissed. Your silence, therefore, doesn't exist in isolation. It echoes every past hurt that hasn't fully healed, and what's more, the longer the silence stretches, the more intense her emotional response becomes. In the beginning, she might just feel a mild discomfort or confusion. But with time, that discomfort grows into anxiety, then into suspicion, then into anger or even emotional withdrawal. Her mind begins creating scenarios, and her heart reacts to those imagined realities. And the painful part is, none of these emotions are being balanced by communication. There's no way to ground her thoughts, no reassurance, no clarity, just silence, and in that silence, emotions spiral. This emotional chaos doesn't always show on the surface. She might still go about her day, do her job, laugh with friends, post stories on Instagram, but internally the noise is loud. And depending on how much she cared about you or the connection you shared, this emotional storm could be more intense than you realize. Women are incredibly strong, but that strength doesn't make them immune to emotional confusion. In fact, the stronger the woman, the more she tries to hold it together on the outside while quietly breaking apart on the inside. The silence also makes her question your authenticity. If you once made her feel special, consistent, or emotionally safe, she might wonder if it was all an illusion. Was any of it real? Was he just pretending? These thoughts aren't just about missing you. They're about questioning her own judgment. That's one of the most painful parts, because now your silence is not only hurting her emotionally, it's making her doubt herself. And here's the ironic twist. The emotional alarm that gets triggered often has nothing to do with your intentions. Maybe you needed space. Maybe you're going through something. Maybe you didn't think it would be a big deal. But to her, that silence feels like abandonment. It feels like rejection. It feels like you walked out of a room and never turned back, leaving her to clean up the emotional mess alone. In the end, when you suddenly stop talking to her, you're not just removing yourself from a conversation. You're igniting a quiet emotional storm within her. A storm of questions, confusion, insecurity, and pain. And whether she shows it or not, whether she confronts you or not, her emotional alarm system has already gone off. She's already listening for answers, searching for clarity, and the louder that silence grows, the more deeply it affects her. When you suddenly stop talking to a woman and she genuinely cares about you, something interesting begins to happen. She feels a pull she can't easily ignore. That silence you created becomes more than just an empty space. It becomes a challenge to her heart. If she was emotionally invested, your absence doesn't go unnoticed. It creates a tension within her that slowly starts to push her toward action. Because when a woman truly values someone, emotional distance doesn't make her indifferent. It makes her curious, restless, and eventually responsive. The truth is, when someone we care about pulls away, we don't always want to admit how much it bothers us. But that discomfort becomes fuel. If you meant something to her, your silence will feel like an interruption to something meaningful, something that had potential. That's when the shift happens, from simply noticing your absence to actively feeling it. It's in this emotional space where decisions are made. And if she cares, if she was emotionally involved, even if she tried to hide it before, she'll find subtle or obvious ways to reconnect. Women often don't chase in the loud, dramatic ways you might expect. It's rarely about begging or pleading. Instead, it could be something as simple as her sending a "hey," just checking in a message, or reacting to one of your stories, or asking a mutual friend about you. These small actions may not scream desperation, but they speak volumes about her internal state. They reveal that your absence created an imbalance she now wants to resolve. It's a response that doesn't come from weakness. It comes from emotional investment. What's important to understand is that when a woman reaches out after you've gone silent, it's often not about needing closure. It's about holding on to something she still sees as valuable. She's not just trying to get your attention for ego's sake. She's doing it because your presence mattered to her, and now that it's gone, she's left wondering why. That question alone can drive someone to act, because uncertainty in the heart rarely sits still. The longer she sits with that silence, the stronger her urge becomes to break it, especially if there was depth, consistency, and emotional connection before. It's also important to remember that women are intuitive. If she feels like something is unresolved between you two, or if the relationship felt like it was going somewhere, your silence can trigger her need for emotional closure, or even emotional reconnection. That need is powerful, especially if she believed there was mutual understanding or chemistry. She might replay moments in her head, reread old messages, listen to your voice notes, and try to decipher what shifted. And when the weight of your absence becomes too heavy, she will act on it, even if it's subtle. Now, this doesn't mean every woman will respond immediately. Some might take their time, some might battle with their pride. Some may convince themselves not to reach out, but caring has a way of breaking those walls down. The more real the connection was, the harder it is to stay silent in return. Eventually, emotion wins over logic. The heart speaks louder than the mind, and even the most emotionally guarded woman may find herself typing that message or trying to initiate a conversation, not because she's weak, but because the silence became unbearable. When a woman chases after silence, it isn't always about trying to bring things back to how they were. Sometimes it's just about needing to feel seen again, to understand, to make peace with what feels like a sudden emotional disconnection. And if she truly cared about you, she'll want to know that the bond she felt wasn't one-sided, that she didn't misread all those moments you spent together, that what you shared actually meant something. And yes, not every woman will make her effort obvious. Some might pretend not to care, put on a brave face, act indifferent, but behind that exterior, she's still checking if you've texted. She's still hoping your name pops up on her screen. She's still wondering if you miss her the way she misses you. That quiet longing is often invisible, but it's real, and for many women, it eventually pushes them toward doing something about it. In the end, if she cares, she will chase. Maybe not in ways that are loud or dramatic, but in ways that are meaningful, in ways that say, I noticed you're gone, and that matters to me. She may try to close the gap you created. She may try to reopen the door you shut. And her effort, however small, will speak volumes about how deeply she felt your presence. Because caring doesn't sit in silence forever, it moves, it acts, it reaches out. When you suddenly stop talking to a woman and she doesn't respond at all, no message, no call, no curiosity, no emotional reaction, that silence on her end becomes its own kind of answer. It's easy to think that no reaction means she didn't notice or doesn't care, but that assumption often misses the deeper truth. A lack of response is still a response. In fact, it can be one of the most powerful ones. Because when a woman doesn't reach out, doesn't chase, doesn't try to reconnect, it means she's either already emotionally detached or has made peace with your absence long before you even decided to go silent. Many men believe that silence will always provoke a reaction. They expect the woman to wonder where they went, to feel lost without their presence, or to break the tension by initiating contact. But not every woman reacts that way. Some women have been through enough emotional cycles to know that not every silence needs to be answered. Some have experienced the kind of emotional growth that makes them capable of letting go without making a scene. For them, your silence isn't confusing, it's clarifying. It tells them everything they need to know about where they stand in your life. Her lack of response could be a sign of deep inner strength. When a woman chooses not to react, not to chase, not to break the silence you created, she's not being cold, she's being grounded. She may have cared, she may have even loved you, but she also learned to value herself more. And that means she won't fight for space in your life if you've made it clear, through your silence, that she's no longer a priority. Her non-reaction is not indifference, it's self-respect. It's a statement without words. If you can let go without explanation, then I can let go without confrontation. It's also possible that she saw this coming long before you did. Maybe she sensed your energy shifting, your interest fading, or your attention wandering. And in her own quiet way, she began preparing herself emotionally for the moment you'd pull away. So when it finally happened, she didn't fall apart as she was already halfway out the door in her heart. That's why some women don't flinch when you disappear. They've already accepted the truth you're only now showing with your silence. On the other hand, her silence might also mean she simply doesn't have the emotional energy to play the game. Some women have been in relationships where they were always the one giving, always the one chasing, always the one trying to fix things. When they come across silence again, they don't respond with anxiety. They respond with distance. Not because they don't feel anything, but because they've promised themselves not to repeat patterns that hurt them. For them, silence is not a puzzle, it's a door closing, and they're finally okay with that. It's also worth noting that a woman's silence can be the result of emotional healing. Maybe she used to chase, maybe in the past she would have begged for clarity, asked you why, tried to make things right. But not this time, because this time she knows her worth. She knows that real love doesn't require her to chase someone who's walking away, so she chooses not to respond, not because she's numb, but because she's grown. That silence can be unsettling, especially if you expected her to react. You might check your phone, expecting a text that never comes. You might post something, hoping she'll respond, but she doesn't. You'll feel the space she used to occupy, and now that she's not trying to come back into it, it might make you question your own decision to go silent in the first place. Because now you see that she was capable of walking away, too. And she's doing it without saying a word. The most powerful reaction a woman can have to your silence is her own. Not loud, not messy, just calm, just distance, just letting you go with the same energy you gave her. That kind of silence speaks volumes. It says, I noticed, I felt it, and I'm still choosing not to chase you. In the end, if she doesn't react, it doesn't mean she didn't care. It might mean she cared so deeply at one point that now, silence is the only thing that protects her peace. And sometimes, the most deafening response a woman can give you is none at all.